I had just graduated from grad school with my Master's of Divinity, and I was raring to go as a young pastor. I worked hard, our church had doubled, but 6 months in, I woke up in the middle of the night. My chest was killing me. I thought I was dying. My wife had to dial 911. The rescue unit came, rushed me to the hospital. I had heart fibrillation, which is where your heart vibrates so fast that it's really not efficiently pumping blood. The fibrillation was because I was working so hard and I was wearing myself out. I had to make a change, and that night became a defining moment for me in my young ministry because God showed me I was working too hard and praying too little. And I had to learn to pray. I was working. I wanted to be a success. I wanted my church to grow. And my little flock of 23 members had grown to 60-some, 80, and yet it was having its toll on me as a young man. That night, I began praying a very simple prayer. Lord, teach us to pray. Particularly, Lord, teach me to pray. And as I began praying that, God brought a transformation to my heart. He broke my pride and humbled me and empowered me, freeing me from the self-life and the sin and the crud that was in there. And now I pastor by prayer. I preach by prayer. I write by prayer. Prayer is not the only thing we do, but it is the first thing. I was standing in this room a number of years ago because God told me to pray 1 hour for every message I preach. And it was Saturday and I still didn't have the message, and I was praying in this room. And God said, I want you to go and visit James and Ann McKnight. I said, I've got to get my sermon ready. He says, I want you to go visit James and Ann McKnight. So I go in my office and I make a phone call. It was busy. I come back, I said, see, they're busy. He said, I didn't tell you to call them, I told you to go visit. Well, I got in my car and I drove down the street about 4 or 5 miles, and there Ann was standing in the driveway like this. She says, Pastor, how did you know? I said, what's the matter, Ann? She said, James collapsed, he's inside, I just called 911. When I had called her from the church, she was on the phone with 911. I felt like saying, God had my number. He knew that He wanted you to have the comfort of your pastor being there with you at a time like this. God wants us to pray, and He's more eager to teach us to pray than we are to learn. We cheat ourselves so often out of the glory of God's manifest presence in the middle of the church because we neglect prayer. We want to be devoted to prayer so that God can work so dynamically through us, reaching a lost world through a revived church.